Additionally, you must pay attention to your heart's ticking. You must truly comprehend. Perhaps you're searching for a supermodel, but look at this. The most attractive woman in the restaurant is the one who serves you. You must be able to see it for what it is and keep your eyes open. A Hollywood celebrity with 7 children from 3 women, 2 failed marriages, and emotional agony buried beneath legal disputes and a sense of isolation that even celebrity couldn't take away. Kevin Costner's life was characterized by these storms. The empty stage was too cold for the stage lights. Home. The stillness was not broken by applause. And the man's heart that left many scars where it had formerly made the world feel stable. However, from those broken bits, Kevin created a cinematic emotional empire. From The Bodyguard to He was an architect of emotions as much as an actor in Dances with Wolves, with transforming loneliness into poetry, suffering into hope, and illustrating love stories, courage, and family. In the middle of previous storms and lingering despite his losses, he remains silent yet proud, a live example of the strength of perseverance and unwavering determination. If you've ever had a strong bond with him through his roles or exceptional character, such as Kevin, the man who shows the world that sometimes success comes from having the skill rather than being famous, to ascend in the midst of the storm. In order to comprehend the origins of that power, one needs to start at the beginning. To a boy who was born in a place with dirt streets, modest but kind family, being raised with endurance, bravery, and unending fortitude in the face of defeat. On a cold, Kevin Michael Costner was born at dawn in Linwood, California, January 18, 1955. He was the youngest of Sharon Ray and William Bill Costner's children. A dad who labored nonstop in sun and rain, and a loving mother, her heartless hands narrating the tale of severe winters. The scent of dust, oil, and silence filled their tiny house. Giggling. Growing up, Kevin saw his father's rickety doors and shattered fences. Despite his weariness, his mother kept the fire burning at dinner tables and was always fixing things with strong hands. It was a burden on her shoulders. Despite that warmth, there was sadness. 2 years prior to Kevin's birth, his Mark Douglas, his middle brother, survived for just 1 day. That quiet loss had an impact on all of his parents' actions. Bill tightened his rules, intending to shield his surviving kids from a society he no longer trusted, while Sharon encircled her affection in looks and silent movements. Kevin gained the ability to hear sadness in quiet. On evenings when he observed street lights flickering past moving truck windows, he didn't weep. He merely said goodbye in hushed tones that had not yet encountered him. His family was often on the go, pursuing temporary employment in Compton, Ventura, Visalia, and Orange County, a prospect of a short-lived home. He learned to begin a fresh one with every motion, talkerish memory shards as valuable. The music is the sound of cardboard boxes being sealed with tape. That Kevin's early years were a calm one. He wasn't noisy or conspicuous in class. He just sat and watched, composing poetry and developing endurance. His dad, his mother, served as a compass and the cornerstone of his heart, teaching him the value of patience and bravery were the routes to undiscovered realms. I became accustomed to beginning afresh, later, Kevin said. Additionally, it was about living, not just shifting places. Itself. Every farewell was a strength-building brick. Every quiet moment teaches a lesson and paying more attention. At the age of 23, Kevin got married and stepped approaching adulthood with a lofty goal, but no money. California State graduation. Having graduated from Fullerton University with a degree in finance and marketing, he worked at an workplace. His heart, however, belonged to unknown tales. Safety turned into a slow death, and he understood that in order to really live. While returning from his honeymoon in Mexico, fate showed up on a plane. When the motors roared and Kevin was sitting next to Richard Burton, Kevin discussed his ardent desire to become an actor. Burton just gave him a glance and uttered, "You have blue eyes." "I have blue eyes, too. I think you'll be fine." The year in question, when he landed, he added 2 words that Kevin would remember forever. "I wish you luck." Kevin resigned from his position a few weeks later. There was only one luggage, a worn-out jacket, and no audience or cheers. Datsun, with Faith serving as his mentor. He brought the memories of his quiet childhood into Hollywood, a location where greatness was quietly forged. Every farewell and silent suffering served as a lesson in perseverance. Kindness, as well as the capacity to begin anew. Following Kevin's arrival in Hollywood, nothing resembled the romantic tales on the screen. A period of protracted, gloomy days, cold, hungry, and silently dejected. He gave his all to whatever job he could find. Locate, clean boats, transport gifts, and give celebrity tours residences, often pondering whether he might ever reside in a location like that. Himself. When his apartment's heater broke on a night, he would wrap up in cold and lonely in his still-worn garments, muttering to himself, "Just one more day. Don't give up. Keep going." The smell of sweat, diesel, and sea salt held on to him. The backbreaking job caused his hands to crack. At that point, Kevin no ceased to dream of being famous. All he was doing was trying to survive in rejection, sadness, and fatigue. Day after day went by. He knocked at every audition with a portfolio of headshots, but no doors opened for him. They would say, "Leave your photo," without even seeing up. In order to save the bus fare, he occasionally walked miles. His sneakers were worn, hunger sensations constricting like an implacable knot in the stomach. He would watch extras in his car outside a studio on chilly, rainy nights. He stayed in the shadows, unseen, as though he had never been there, and laughed through the mist under the lights. Instead of the visions that Los Angeles offered, there was quiet, cold, and loneliness. Yet something strong started to emerge in that quiet, a silent resolve that he would not be defeated and go home after every rejection, and every door that was shut bolstered his determination. One afternoon, a friend brought up a tiny beach project. No compensation, no promises, just an opportunity to be on set. Kevin arrived suntanned and barefoot, hair bleached by the California sun. "All we need is someone who is willing to work." Kevin nodded as the director said, "I don't know what else to do but dive into the moment." Kevin sensed a change in himself when the camera shifted to him for the first time. It was a challenge, not hope. The world appeared to disappear in that instant. He, the lens, and a quiet promise that he would never leave the light were all that was present, not even once. Sizzleby USA, his debut picture, was a terrible farce. It was cheap, awkward, released years later, much to my dismay. I wish I could burn every copy. They were humiliated, but that was only half of it, Kevin later recounted. The feeling of being forgotten and invisible in a world that he had thought would accept him made up the other half. He relentlessly auditioned for 6 long years, seemingly fading from everyone's casting directors didn't glance up, so doors slammed shut, and the bright dreams started to dim. A part in The Big Chill appeared to be promising, but every part he filmed was removed. He sat by himself at the premiere, his name in late-night acting, gone off the screen. Poor, forgotten, but unbeaten lessons. He discovered how to transform rejection into tolerance and silence into power. His subsequent words, "Dreams don't open doors for you. They merely give you the then." In 1985, Lawrence Kasdan, the guy who had the authority to continue pounding, summoned him for a part in Silverado and removed him from The Big Chill. The once forgotten actor burned on screen as the camera rolled, marking the moment when Kevin finally catapulted into the spotlight. It was survival, not luck, whether it was light, lens, or acclaim. Once observing from a distance, the former boat scrubber and delivery driver is now stood in the middle of every paper, screen, and dream. Kevin Costner's name finally made an impression when Silverado debuted, and he exuded an aura that gave audiences a sense of reality rather than show. 2 years later, The Untouchables made him a symbol of American honor, brave, silent, and unwavering in the face of turmoil. Although the movie made over $100 million, its real worth was in the respect he deserved. He carved his name into the soul with Bull Durham and Field of Dreams, classic American film. Whispering while standing in a cornfield, if audiences believed he was speaking directly to them, saying, "You build it, he will come." Anyone who had waited for a miracle and developed anything on faith. By 1990, Kevin he wants to make movies instead of merely being an actor. Mortgaging his subsequently, he established TIG Productions to create the 3-hour film Dances with Wolves. Hollywood referred to it as crazy, and it was partially set in Lakota that he was urged by the studios to cut the silent parts. But he refused that he wanted the movie to speak for people who have been silenced by history, and the expenses skyrocketed to $22 million. Storms hampered filming. Actors left, and he had to spend icy nights in trailers, wondering if he was ruining his life for a fantasy that no one cared about. When the movie came out, there was no longer any dispute. Dances with Wolves made $424 million, winning 7 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Picture, and changing the Linwood youngster into one of Hollywood's most influential people. In the midst of the roaring cheers, Kevin in a low voice, "I still can't believe in myself." Fame and exhaustion followed in the ensuing years. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, made $390 million, despite criticism for his British accent. He grinned despite claims, but they occasionally seemed like chains. He featured in Oliver Stone-esque. Evan's response to the contentious political movie JFK was straightforward. We become more free when we have an uncomfortable but necessary conversation about the truth. When the bodyguard position came along in 1992, he waited for Whitney Houston to take it and turned down a large sum in exchange for a portion of the earnings. This is a risk that only someone who has meticulously tracked down every penny for gas would take. Results were better than expected. The movie made $411 million, and the soundtrack Kevin made more than $20 million and sold more than 50 million copies. He was one of the most paid actors in Hollywood by 1993, earning $10 million per movie. A huge change from the youngster who used to murmur while sleeping by a freezing heater. He promised himself that one day everything will be all right and went to sleep. When friends looked at Kevin Costner, they saw a man who was not at his optimum. Ran the set throughout the day and edited movies at night, hardly getting any sleep. Although he acknowledged that success is sometimes lonelier than failure, when everyone agrees with you, you start to question whether you still are. Then the autumn arrived. Waterworld 1995. That the storm destroyed the set, and the budget nearly killed him. The movie was supposed to be his next masterpiece that reached $235 million, and in the midst of a hurricane, Kevin was tethered to a mast. The postman cruelly ridiculed him, referring to it as Kevin's Gate. Even worse was 1997, which won the Golden Raspberry Awards for Worst. The hands that once held an Oscar statue are pictured with the worst director and worst actor already shuddered in front of overdue bills. But Kevin chose not to flee, instead returning to Bollywood, picking lesser endeavors, and telling straightforward tales that few Hollywood stars dared to touch. I've never been scared to start anew because he knew how to do it, because he had done it all his life. And perhaps it is the ultimate measure of greatness, he added, rather than the cheering, but having the fortitude to get back up after everything else has crumbled. Hollywood, which had greeted him with cheers, now turned its back on him because there were no cameras or scripts for the first time in decades, only the sound of his own doubt. He claimed that instead of crying, he simply felt empty, and it was in that emptiness the media mocked him, labeling him a throwback to the 90s. But I found what was real. Kevin didn't care, though, because you can't respond to every lie. You just have to survive them. He walked by himself on chilly Aspen evenings when everything was covered with snow. As his boots crunched on the snow, he listened to the silence and pondered why he had ever needed such a large amount of acclaim that he had to fall in order to relearn how to rise. But instead of feeling bitter, he discovered clarity. Kevin resumed writing that winter, but not for attention. But to experience the delight of making things. Open Range 2003 was the outcome. A straightforward Western that prioritized the human heart over special effects. Despite spending $26 million, the movie made $68 million, yet the most valuable it was his own voice. Fame teaches, he added, but the truth doesn't have to shout. It just needs time. Failure teaches you how to endure. It teaches you how to rise. By Yellowstone, 2018, that silence had become thunder. At 63, he played John Dutton. Kevin stated, he wasn't playing a hero. He was a tough guy defending the irreplaceable. Play Men Who Dare to Try. The most popular cable series, more than 16 million people watch television, demonstrating that resilience is more important than praise. And the 1988 Project Horizon, an American tale, turned into the last, but not least. Kevin invested $38 million of his personal funds in it while standing in the Utah desert. His velvety voice remained firm despite the wind tearing through his jacket and the weariness on his cheeks rolling. We'll get it. Reviews were mixed when the first chapter debuted at Candid in 2024. However, he grinned because he was fulfilling a promise and wasn't seeking praise. The conviction and the truth he had sought all along were more valuable than the film's meager return on investment of his life. Kevin Costner, now 70, is no longer merely atop the world that risen above it, transforming stillness into ritual, work into ritual, and loss into legacy into a song. Ultimately, he creates meaning rather than only films. In addition to the highs and lows of his career, Kevin Costner's romantic life has seen equally dramatic storms. In 1975, while attending California State University Fullerton, he met Cindy Silva. He was 20 years old, confused, dreaming, and full of questions about the future than responses. She was radiant, a budding actor with a belief in humanity in her eyes that to combat the anxieties of youth. They got together in between classes and shared giggles. She referred to him as the silent youngster who seemed to be constantly chasing tails that none else saw. In 1978, 3 years later, they got married with a borrowed ring and the misguided assumption that their sole strength would be love. They collected items from the curb and spent nights pouring cheap paint in their first home, which smelled of fresh paint and promise. She put in extra shifts while he worked, and they talked about wine and someday toiled on LA's streets while going to unsuccessful audition after unsuccessful audition. Then returned to her voice. Don't Give Up Lily in 1984, when Annie was born, Joe in 1988, and Kevin in 1986. Kevin was unable to contain his tears during the he promised to create a world worthy of them while holding their small hands in the hospital, and for a while he did. Picnics, photographs taken in the California light. Everything was dreamily golden. Cindy believed in me before anyone else, he once remarked. That conviction was the wind that sustained me during each start. However, success was also what ate the food it provided. Field of Dreams, The Untouchables, Wolves Dancing. His name was inscribed more deeply into Hollywood's rock with each film. Every accolade and praise created a quiet area in the house. The arrival of fame similar to a flood. The man who formerly smelled of paint when he returned home now smelled of other cities. Off-studio illumination. Cindy endured canceled holidays, missed birthdays, raising 3 kids in Ventura while reading newspaper articles about her husband that she never purchased. When he, during the 1991 Oscar ceremony, standing beneath the golden lights, his tuxedo, Cindy was at home, sitting in front of the chilly screen, his heart empty, and he was spotless. The 3 kids are sound asleep. Her face was illuminated by the light, yet the gap between them had grown like an ocean. Belief doesn't evaporate overnight, he subsequently stated. Like the twilight, it fades. They made an effort to keep it intact. He hesitated. Filming. They went to a marriage counselor. In search of the old laughing, they hid away in remote cabins. However, the distance had established itself. Late-night rumors, peeks behind the scenes. Everything was poisoned, but nothing was proven. The woman who used to complete his sentences now spoke insufficiently to keep from crying. The once forever guy came to the realization that he had lost his ability to return home. Compared to failure, success can be more isolating. He admitted it. Between premieres and airports, the term silently exhaled its final breath for all eternity. After 16 years of dating, in 1994, they declared irreconcilable differences as the reason for filing for divorce. The first round of negotiations was harsh. The approximately $160 million that Cindy's attorneys sought was not due to greed, but from suffering and treachery. They reached a settlement after months of silence. For over $80 million. No prenuptial agreement existed. Instead, there was merely have faith. Cindy was given custody of the children's home. Kevin maintained the output. Company, as well as the weight of celebrity. I will only see half of my kids at the time, he said in a notable interview. His voice stifled. He packed boxes marked family, movies, and movies the night the papers were signed, recollections of their final meal together, free of charges or disputes, just fatigue. Unconsciously, 2 hands reached for the same drink, then stopped, recognizing that a habit was all that separated them. Outside, the hush within reverberated like a death knell as the bulbs blazed, and Hollywood referred to it as one of the costliest divorces at the time, and for them, it was the burial of a life constructed in love. Cindy stepped back from the limelight, while Kevin lost himself in his profession, thinking the loss may be dulled by movement. But each job and each premiere seemed like atonement. Although he could repair his reputation, he was unable to bring back his 3 kids living together. Years later, when the radiance dimmed, he went back to the old house in Ventura, the paint peeling, the garden gone. He stood on the doorway where she used to be, but the wind still rustled the drapes like it had when they were kids. Tio wait for him, while listening to her laughing and the sound of tiny feet the corridor, now only in his mind. Home, he said that is not a location. Rather, it is a moment that cannot be recovered. All of the lessons he had paid for were contained in that quiet. Because love dies not from rage, but from silence. Absence. If fame is traded for the people who cheered first, it is worthless. True wealth is the time you spend with those you care about. Kevin and Cindy made the decision to be kind in the midst of disaster. They attended graduations, co-parented, and watched the faces that contained both of their eyes. After 2 years, the silence turned into an unusual companion. Kevin constantly worked, but when the lights were off, the only sound he could hear in the deserted room was his own breath. The man who previously had faith in eternity lived cautiously and was terrified must never again handle anything delicate. Bridget Rooney made her debut in 1996. A woman of a descendant of the Pittsburgh Steelers family, she exudes intelligence and serene elegance. They first met at a charity function in Aspen, where champagne and snow mixed with laughing that he grinned and said, "I still believe. It's just I'm not sure," when she asked if he still believed in happiness that I no longer deserve it. Based on that, Liam Timothy Costner was born in 1996, and Kevin assumed responsibility for establishing a trust fund offering complete assistance. The partnership ended quickly in 1998, but it ended amicably, and Liam turned into a packaged gift in Kevin's subdued dignity and responsibility. After many years, Christine he met Baumgartner in 1998, and the two were married at Dunner Ranch in 2004. Grace Avery, Hayes Logan, and Caden Wyatt were the 3 children born to Aspen. Kevin was the actual hero the first time, so he didn't have to play the part. They constructed a whole house. Movies, winter snow days, and running along the shore evenings with sleeping bags and popcorn. But return to work in your early 20s and 20s that invaded the area that had been occupied by love. But Yellowstone and Horizon kept him at bay. From home for several months. In 2023, Christine filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable disagreements. The split took place in public, accompanied by legalities and figures, but what was left was a minor but significant loss. Wordless silences, 3 kids split between 2 houses. The prenuptial agreement remained in place, but the divorce was formally finalized in early 2024. So did the suffering. Kevin lost half his heart in addition to his possessions. On set, while his personal horizon collapsed, he filmed Horizon. Years later, what's left are not core documents, but still pictures. The father in the trailer, his hands shaking as the suitcase rolling down the gravel road. The vacant home with the kitchen lights still on, and the script in hand. 3 kids were observing through the window. Kevin recognized the silence. Nobody can avoid the cost of love, no matter how strong they are. Presence cannot be replaced by success. Some setbacks give lessons that triumphs can learn. Never could, because when everything is said and done, it doesn't matter how many individuals he interacted with, but how profoundly he remained in each one. Kevin Costner maintains his silent promises, co-parents, and attends school functions, but significant deeds. Genuine love transcends a signature and transforms into obligation, remembrance, and grace. Storms of Hollywood. Kevin Costner bore a deep scar related to his family. As the ovation subsided and the lights went off, he became aware of the solution lay in a secret debt to his parents rather than in celebrity. Long before Hollywood ever called, Bill and Sharon had helped shape the man he became. His name. Bill and Sharon Costner were reserved individuals who didn't like for attention. They brought Kevin and his siblings up in modest homes where the smell of laundry was the only thing they cared about. Every paycheck was placed on the kitchen table, where honest effort and soap were mixed together was more valuable than a standing ovation. Bill, his father, fixed electrical lines, coming home each night with his hair covered in grime, but his faith intact. His mother Sharon listened to the suffering of others as a social worker, then went back home to make sure the family was always kind. They taught Kevin 2 things that will last a lifetime. Work is sacred, and generosity, no matter how tiny, has a lasting impact. However, there he never had the opportunity to recount their story in its entirety. When his mother became ill, he was far away from Hollywood screamed, away, chasing the dream they had sacrificed for him. However, her steady, gentle voice continued to cut through everything. You're doing well, but remember to unaware that it would be his final pledge to his mother, he said, relax. He was on set when the call came in to announce her death. The lights were too bright. He missed the opportunity to clasp her hand one more time because the noise was too loud, and he missed his mother's remarks, had preserved specifically for her kid. His father also died 2 years later, vanishing like a heart that was unable to function without its partner. Kevin was sitting by himself in a hotel room when he got the news early, feeling devastated for the second time. It's the curse of you keep chasing what you think will make them proud, he once stated. And when you eventually succeed, they're gone. That he recalled the hands that had created every aspect of him as he stood in front of the coffin at the funeral. Kevin muttered that he only ever asked for honesty, never praise. After everyone had left that evening, he sat in his car with no audience or camera. It's just a son who came to understand that the two individuals who had saved his world were both gone. He felt empty after losing both nearly at the same time. Possibly fill notoriety, wealth, and the thousands of happy when your parents die. Faces on movie posters suddenly lose all significance. The world is fundamentally different when you're abroad, he once stated. You have to become your own parent. Ever since, there have been recurring scenes of fathers and sons in Kevin's films. Fields, rivers, forgiveness, and farewells. Instead of following the cacophony, he started to listen to the silence his parents had experienced, the silence of work, of presence and love. Occasionally, he takes a car out to the ranch, says, I did, standing beneath the expansive sky they once dreamed under. However, without you two, it would not have been feasible due to a straightforward inactuality. His parents taught him why he should shine, but the world taught him how that mattered. He can still hear their voices, his voice, and their ovation as it fades. His mother's silent plea and his father's profound resonance serve as a reminder to him that every tale is valuable. One may assume that a person's life, with so many stories, starts and finishes at home. Catastrophes would be sufficient. But for Kevin, the drama went on with the death of Whitney Houston, a very unique and dear friend. Millions of people mourned Whitney Houston's death at the age of 48, saying she was too young to die and too loved to be forgotten. It was the loss of a voice for the general public and the loss of a voice for Kevin Costner that he once vowed to defend a soul, a buddy, and a muse. When they first met in 1991, Kevin was already well known and Whitney was still an untouchable symbol, although loneliness can occasionally be concealed by celebrity. Maybe that's why they recognized one another right away. Two individuals who were aware of the pressure to be flawless. Kevin noticed that Whitney's hands were shaking as she got ready for The Bodyguard, the screenplay, and determined that she would be the only one to perform the major role. Despite pressure from the studio and concerns about the interracial relationship, he waited a full year for her to be ready. Pairing. Kevin took on the job of his real-life security on set. After each scene, he remained by her side, comforting, laughing, and supporting her. They spent hours discussing God, family, and how being famous was both a blessing and a burden. She referred to him as my safe haven, and he termed I was fortunate enough to be able to protect her. When the cameras rolled, that delicate trust became eternal. When The Bodyguard was freed in 1992, everything came to a halt. The iconic picture of Kevin carrying Whitney through the storm was her shaky, golden voice in I Will That Song. Always Love You was more than simply a soundtrack. It immortalized her name. That was a prophecy, a promise, and a confession. She made the entire globe feel safe for 4 days, and Kevin discovered her ultimate power. Kevin watched. But fame was a curse as well. Proud but powerless from a distance as Whitney fought the demons. Alone. Could defend her. He claimed that people don't remember that behind every great voice is an attempt by a human being to straighten out. Then, on February 11th, the fateful call arrived. In 2012, Whitney was discovered dead in a hotel room in Beverly Hills, just hours before a prenatal Grammy party. A dashed hope, an unfinished project, a rumored return. Suddenly the light went out, leaving Kevin sitting in stunned stillness. Are you yes? On the day of the funeral, February, that was all he could say. On the 18th, Kevin stood in front of Whitney's coffin at New Hope Baptist in Newark. "Whitney, you weren't just good enough," she said, her voice shaking. "You were excellent." He talked about her anxieties and his unwavering faith, saying, "I always believed in you," said the words that made everyone cry. "And I will always love you." That farewell could not have been scripted by any director. Thousands of candles outside, gentle singing and crying together, they saw how everyone grieved the loss of a friend. Over the years, Kevin hardly mentioned her. Whenever the song, "I Will Always Love You" came on the radio, he lowered the volume out of respect, not to forget, like walking out of a room where the person he loved was still there. When The Bodyguard's 30th anniversary came around, he claimed that her genuine heart was the reason the film succeeded. "It's the heart, not the fame or the fall from grace." In addition to highlighting his own frailty, Whitney's passing served as a reminder to Kevin that even the exceptional require protection. 70-year-old physique bearing a lifetime of work, of unseen pains, of takes, of roles, of perspiration, and his body was marked by open range, hidden figures, and blood on Waterworld and Spirit. "Pain is not the enemy," he famously declared. "It helps me remember that I'm still here and doing what I love." He moves more slowly today. His back, and when the wind blows through Aspen, his hands shake and his legs hurt. However, each breath and step has a purpose. He rises before the sun, walks through old roads, cares for the horses, reminding himself that his body may deteriorate, but every sight, every moment, every heart still burns, believes, and loves. Every scar from a restless night is evidence of commitment. Kevin is aware that although everyone just views him as the bodyguard, the sheriff, the cowboy, or the hero, within lies a guy who silently endured, loved, and suffered. He embraces the suffering, incorporates it into his life narrative, and lets it become ingrained in his heart, memory, and portion of the pledge he made to his closest loved ones. For Kevin, the loss was more than just not being famous or the death of Whitney Houston, which served as a reminder of the value of friendship, commitment, and trust strong enough to leave a lasting impression on the heart. Even as time fades, he continues to whisper to her during those silent times as though she had never left. "For millions of years, I believed in you, and I still do." Kevin Costner, who is now an adult fan with graying hair and a slower gait, continues to be a symbol of tenacity and faith. He rises each day, mounts his horses, and keeps working tirelessly, providing evidence for anyone who chooses to move despite being exhausted. Despite the signs of aging on his physique, his presence adds a kind of redemption, demonstrating that willpower can transcend bodily boundaries. A serene scene occurs late one night in Aspen, according to pals, and Kevin observes from the fence. Grazing horses, his hand resting on the wooden rail, wrinkles deep, veins visible. He inhales softly, as though there are storms for a lifetime behind him, carving the light on the golden flaming sky that a fresh horizon awaits you ahead. The body won't survive forever, but the courage, the love, the tale, and the belief will all endure. He smiles slightly and says, "I may have slowed down, but I've never stopped." Kevin, who is 70 years old, is a live example of how dreams never go away. They simply evolve. Shape. From the young man in Linwood, California, who was the son of a social worker and a ditch digger, he currently possesses the empires he constructed on his own. The Aspen, Colorado-based 160-acre Dunner Ranch, a tranquil haven for his entire family. It is scented with pine in the morning light in Santa Barbara. The roughly $60 million property in Flint Ridge features 1,000 lavender plants, a terrace to watch sunsets on the Pacific, a private screening room, and a bottle wine merchant. His automobile and boat collection, which includes a 1968 Shelby GT35DH. When it comes to ancient wooden boats, an Audi S8 and a Land Rover Defender 90 are not merely modes of transportation, but representations of a life well lived. But Kevin's legacy is determined by how he gives back, not by his wealth or belongings. The millions of dollars for humanitarian help, women, children, and medical research. He claims that money is only a tool for developing, not a guarantee of success. His life revolves around his family. His 7 children, ranging from Annie, Lily, Caden, Hayes, Grace, Joe, and Liam all bear the echoes of Kevin's journey that each a part of his soul. They watch movies in the Aspen Valley, ride horses together, and keep the family fire blazing, laugh, and enjoy a private theater. Family is the entire novel, not just a chapter, and I'm continuously writing it, he said. Kevin continues to write, direct, and dream, and he still gets up before the sun comes up. Now, though, not for fame, but to finish what he began and leave a lasting legacy, one that is genuine, enduring, loving, and he smiles when asked about his legacy. I don't require a monument. My life and the people I care about are my legacy. To the surface, Kevin Costner is a Hollywood legend, yet upon closer inspection, he eyes evidence that hardship is not incompatible with grace, but rather the difficulty that generates the gateway to elegance, and that fame is not the source of life's purpose rather from commitment, affection, and unshakable faith. Tonight, please take a time to observe your surroundings, whether you're in a peaceful home, an empty room, or even in the latter stages of life. Kevin Costner's narrative can still you. It serves as a reminder that for those who continue to have the courage to stand, life is never truly over. Repairing, forgiving, and starting over are never too late. Consider a little boy growing up in Linwood, California, surrounded by boxes and difficult times. From there, with unwavering determination and willpower, he managed countless obstacles and created his own universe. Expansive ranches in Aspen, estates, beautiful views of the Pacific Ocean, tree-lined roadways, and the early morning light. However, his fame and belongings don't define him. What makes Kevin Costner is the manner in which he lives, gives, and maintains his belief in what really counts. His life demonstrates that dreams are not developed out of consolation, but rather from days of perseverance, from the suffering that made him more resilient, from an unwavering conviction. Each scar, pain, and wrinkle is evidence that even when the world turned its back, they got up and continued to walk. And it was because of those very difficulties that he discovered how to love, help, how to transform adversity into strength. Keep in mind that everything can start once more. Just like the Linwood youngster, we can all transform obstacles into chances, suffering into knowledge, and aspirations into realities. Please leave a note of gratitude if this tale resonates with you. It only needs to be a modest expression of appreciation for the individual who lived each day to the fullest, never gave up, and continues to inspire us to keep going. I hope you have health, serenity, love, and contentment tonight, no matter where you are. Keep in mind that true wealth in life is determined by what we have rather than what we own. The love we leave behind, what we give, and what we endure. That was demonstrated by Kevin Costner, a live example of the strength of tenacity as well as faith.